So apparently, when I was 4 years old, I was full of requests. Abba, can I have a sandwich? Abba, can I have a glass of milk? Abba, why are we all alive? I know, this is exactly the question that every parent hopes their 4-year-old is going to ask them on a random afternoon. But that question that I had at 4 still resides for me, and I think for many of us, deep inside my soul. Why do we get out of bed in the morning? What gives our lives meaning and a sense of purpose? What makes and fills our souls? I once met a 102-year-old woman who had a very clear sense of purpose. I met Phyllis when I was a nursing home chaplain. Unfortunately, she was sick, depressed, refusing to eat or drink. I was about to leave on a mission to Israel, and as I sat with her and we prayed, I feared it was our final goodbye. A few weeks later, I came back to the nursing home and I asked the head chaplain about Phyllis. She pointed down the hall, and there, sitting up, awake, alert, hair freshly set, pink lipstick, pearls, was Phyllis, sitting, holding court with the other ladies, playing cards. I had a chance to ask her what had changed. She said that a few weeks earlier, her son, who was 82, had been sick, and she feared that he was going to die. But while I was traveling, he had gotten better, he had rallied, and he was calling her every day. He needed some advice from his mommy. Phyllis had a very clear sense of purpose. Her animating story was that of a mother who was needed by her son. But what about those of us who don't have a story like Phyllis? What can give our lives meaning and purpose? And what can give us a sense of purpose that can outlive any one relationship and outlast any one responsibility? I believe that Jewish tradition, the Jewish story, can give us a sense of meaning and purpose that can make and fill our souls. And done right, Jewish education can be the process of making and shaping and filling those souls. But how? How can Jewish education make and fill purpose-driven souls? It starts, like every good Jewish thing, with stories. We human beings are innately storytelling creatures. We can see that in everything, from the earliest cave drawings to the TV shows that I think so many of us, I hope, binge watch on Netflix. We order our world through stories. Neuroscientists tell us that we can only remember and understand every detail if we can hang it on a storyline that already makes sense to us in our brains. In fact, those storylines become the filter through which every experience, every perception can become meaningful. In order to understand our purpose, we need to see ourselves as characters in a meaningful story. And here's the thing. As Jews, we inherit a story that can give our lives meaning and a sense of purpose. The Torah and Jewish tradition. That inherited memory track, if it becomes our own, can help us make meaning and coherence out of our highest and lowest moments. It can help us have a sense of purpose. It can make and fill our souls. And the Jewish tradition actually gives us a gift in ritual, a set of behaviors that can allow us to try on and live the Jewish story as if it's our own. And in remembering that story through living it, our individual memory tracks are engraved with our collective memory. As the Jewish story becomes our story, our souls are transformed. So our story, the Jewish story, begins with our father, the wandering Aramean. Abraham was lost. He didn't know what his purpose was until he heard a divine call. Lech lecha me'artzecha, go out from your land. And Abraham and Sarah picked up and left everything that they knew so that we could have a purposeful journey. And Abraham and Sarah were pretty unique. Alone in the wilderness, with very few resources, they decided to open their tent and share their blessings with everyone who would come by. Hot, thirsty, dusty wanderers would happen onto that tent in the middle of the desert, walk in, ask for something to eat. And a visitor would say, "What are you doing here?" Abraham would give his visitors some bread and say, "I left because I found idol worship empty. And on the journey, I heard a call to be a blessing, which teaches us that we can live up to our highest potential, that we can change the world through our actions." Asked for something to drink, Sarah would answer her visitor, who would wonder, "Where are you going?" Sarah would give that thirsty visitor some milk and say, "We're on a journey to an unknown destination, but we have a mission. On that journey, we are called to be holy, to behave ethically, even when it's hard." It's said in the Torah that when Abraham and Sarah came into the desert, they came with nothing, and they struggled with infertility. But when they left Haran, they took with them all the souls that they had made. Those thirsty, hot, dusty travelers came into the tent looking for some food and drink. But what they found in living the Jewish story was powerful spiritual sustenance. As they lived Jewishly in that tent with Abraham and Sarah, as that story gave their lives a sense of meaning and purpose, their souls were transformed. Abraham and Sarah were the first Jewish educators. Jewish education to make souls has to be more like Abraham and Sarah's tent. The problem is that most of our Hebrew schools, which is where most Jews receive Jewish education, they're just not set up for that. Skills which they teach are incredibly important, but unapplied, inapplicable, disconnected from a meaningful storyline, they're useless. We know that teaching about intergenerational rituals that are supposed to take place in the home in a classroom with only children present can easily become devoid of meaning. Learning about the Torah as an historical document, it's parv at best. But to bring people together to create living interpretations of our texts, where they're gathering the skills that they need in order to live that meaningful life, that is soul transforming. Memorization does not make souls. Memory making does. So I became a Hebrew school director, and I was challenged to figure out how to create those tents of meaning, where people could be invited in to live the Jewish story and be inspired to learn what they needed to know to participate. In order to create those soul transformations, we had to give people an opportunity to participate in something that the scholar Yosef Chaim Yerushalmi called ritual remembering, to engage in real-time Jewish experiences in their lives, in their homes if possible, maybe even in the White House. We needed to make sure that they were always asking the question, what does this mean to me? What does this have to do with my story and my purpose? And we had to make sure that it wasn't limiting their memory track to the synagogue or to Wednesdays at 4 p.m. So we canceled Hebrew school, and we invited everyone to a program we called Jewish Learning Through Living. I had a chance to call a congregant who participated in the first year of the program to see, all these years later, how the program had impacted her family. Drucy remembered a program that took place when her children were in 3rd grade. We were really lucky that year because one of our beloved teachers was getting married. So of course, we had a mock wedding. The kids made the ketubah and the chuppah, and they learned how to be active participants in a Jewish wedding. But we also created a meaningful opportunity for a real ritual, where we invited the families in to visit with the bride and groom in a tish, a celebration. We asked the families to come and share their own marital wisdom and their wedding stories with the couple, which we also peppered with stories from the Jewish tradition. I can promise you, not one of the people present had in-laws as difficult as our patriarch Jacob. So Drucy was one of the parents who took us up on the offer to bring in her own ketubah and share it with the class. As she sat with all of the families and the bride and groom, showing them that ancient Aramaic document that spelled out promises between her and her husband, her children heard, as she retold her own wedding story, they heard how they were part and parcel of the Jewish tradition of weddings and marriage. And It was that moment, says Drusi, that they realized that they were part of something and had obligations to something so much greater than just themselves. They knew that their story was the same story shared with their teacher, with the other families in the class, and with every member of a Jewish family. And Drusi knows that one day when her children get married, they will hang their experiences on that memory track. They will expect to have a document that spells out purposeful obligations passed down through generations between them and their partners, with a commitment to that partnership, to a community, and to the world. By living the Jewish story and remembering themselves into it, their lives were more meaningful. They understood their purpose, and their souls were transformed. We can do this with Jewish education. We can create opportunities for people to live the Jewish story, asking the question, what does this have to do with my life? We can do it in our schools. We can do it in our shuls, in our community centers, and just like our ancestors did, we can do it in our own homes. The matriarch Sarah in her tent would light the Shabbat candles. The Midrash tells us that those candles that she would light would last from one Friday night into the next. When I light Shabbat candles with my children, and I say the words that have been passed down for generations, my soul is infused with the light and the longings and the blessing and the purpose of everyone who's lit candles before me and everyone who will light candles after me. It engraves a memory track that started with my spiritual ancestors, Abraham and Sarah, and was passed on to me by my father, Zichrono Livracha, who told 4-year-old me that we are alive to carry out a mission, to be a blessing, to be holy, to live up to our highest potential. So every single one of us has the capacity to be those soul-transforming Jewish educators. We can start this Friday night. All it takes are a couple of candles, some people to share and live that story with, and a willingness to enter the magical memory engraving time of Shabbat, to see ourselves as inheritors of a legacy that calls on us to be a blessing, to be holy, to live up to our highest potential.